Everybody, I'm Greg Warner. I'm the CEO and founder of MarketSmart. If you've been on one of my webinars before, thank you. And if this is your first time, get ready. There's going to be a lot of information. I'm going to go fast because I know you want all this in about an hour. And I know that you don't have much time for self-training. So I'm going to pile through this. I'm going to or plow through this, and I'm going to pile on a lot of different content here. And some housekeeping items is that first, if you have questions, just put them in the chat bar. I probably won't address them, but I will at the very end. So we're going to go through the presentation. Then I'm going to take a quick kind of break where I give you an elevator pitch on what MarketSmart does, since a lot of times people who enjoy our content and our emails and blog posts and things, it's almost uncanny how often they say they don't know what we do when we finally get them to a meeting. So I want to let you know what we do, but not in a very pressure-oriented way. It'll just be a quick sales pitch, elevator pitch maybe, and then we'll move on to the Q&A, okay? This type of topic tends to get a lot of questions, so go ahead and type them in. Carrie will help me at the very end to sort through them. And yeah, so that's me, Greg Warner, MarketSmart. I'm gonna give you a little bit of history about me. Many of you might already know that I'm really just a ticked off donor. I'm not angry. I'm not walking around like fuming all the time. But what happened was I was running a marketing agency, and this was serving private sector customers. And our business was solely to help them generate highly qualified leads, what I call outreach ready leads, for customers, potential customers who are ready for outreach, highly qualified, and very likely to buy. So I became kind of upset with my favorite charities when the more I gave, the more I found they sold my name to other charities, or they pummeled me with more content, more information. But I shouldn't even say it was information. It was just solicitous content. It was solicitations. It was a lot of direct mail and spam. Or if I went to their events, I felt like I would get shamed if I didn't give enough, or I didn't buy the raffle ticket or something. So the more I got involved in trying to be philanthropic, the more angry I got with the charities that I loved. So I offered to help them for free, and then we got referred around. So soon enough, I decided to change this marketing business that was for the private sector, and I developed software for your sector because I felt that fundraisers, mostly major gift, leadership gift, planned gift officers, were not being supported properly. And then I eventually wrote a book. It takes about 4 hours to read the book. And it explains everything that we do, but also everything that you can do on your own. Now, the last thing about me that I'll tell you is that before I started my own marketing business, I'd been in sales essentially since I was like a kid. So I estimated one time back of the envelope that I'd made 30,000 cold calls to set appointments. So I've been in your shoes. And our company, our staff, are still in your shoes because we're trying to generate leads for ourselves and qualify them so that we can make them ready for outreach for ourselves. So we're kind of doing the same thing as you are, and we've learned a thing or two, and I'm going to explain what I've learned here. So enough about me. Oh, but one last thing. No, not enough about me. So the MarketSmart focuses mostly, and I've used these words already, about qualification and prioritization. That's the area that we focus on. We don't focus on prospect identification. There are tons of companies that do that and tons of prospect researchers. And we don't consult on solicitation. There's tons of people who can do that. But what we find is wrong with the paradigm is that the sector, for some reason, thinks that you can just identify a prospect and then sort of skip and then just get them on the phone and ask them for money. I know you all probably don't believe that because you know what it's really like. But the leadership and often, sadly, some board members think that it's just easy. You just do some RFM analysis and you look at some past giving history, maybe throw in some wealth screening, and boom, you're ready. But you're not ready. So that's a real problem, and I call this the qualification prioritization gap. And that's essentially what MarketSmart works on for you. We'll get to that at the very end before the Q&A session. The last thing on this is we work with hundreds of customers around the world, mostly English-speaking countries, frankly. We put too many logos here, frankly. It's not all of them, but hopefully you recognize some of them. But it's in every sector what we do works. All right, now truly enough of me. All right, it's all about you. We're going to talk about the fact that I have a tremendous amount of empathy for fundraisers. I don't feel that you're supported. I think you're put in a position to do too many different kinds of jobs. You're often pulled in to do things that have nothing to do with major gift fundraising. You know, people think that you're just another hand on deck to help out with other things, and you're not. Your job should be focused just on building relationships with wonderful supporters and helping them to give, okay? But instead, you don't have enough time, you never have enough staff, you never have enough budget. If you're gonna travel, which is not likely right now, you will again, and it's very time consuming and expensive. So qualifying a prospect to determine if it's worthwhile is to even talk to them, because your time is money, is very important, but it's also very challenging. Like I said just a minute ago, the sector doesn't really focus on qualification as much as it does on prospect identification. So because there's a lack of focus on qualification, it makes getting an appointment very, very hard. Now, some of you may remember Jerold Panas, who wrote like a dozen books on fundraising and of course ran a great firm. It's harder to get the appointment than it is to get the gift in many cases. If you get the appointment, according to Jerry, you're about 85% of the way there. If you disagree, type that in the chat. I'll look at that later, but I have found that all my life too, is that you spend a lot more time and energy and it's very hard and frustrating to get an appointment. So there's a lot of reasons why this happens, but let me focus quickly on some challenges according to fundraisers. We did a very small study, so this isn't like peer-reviewed or anything, but according to fundraisers, the challenges that they experience are as follows. For instance, 52% of fundraisers that we surveyed said that supporters just don't respond to their outreach. 18% said that when they get them to engage, they say, oh, I'll give. I don't need to visit with you. I don't need to meet with you. 14% said that even if they said that they would meet with you, they delay it and delay it and delay it. And also, finally, 16% of fundraisers said that when they make these outreach calls, they're not quite sure what to say. So this is a problem, frankly, with trust. You know, if you're having trouble landing appointments with donors, it's mostly because they don't trust you. It's also because they don't see value in why you're reaching out. They don't see what's in it for them. How do they benefit? And lastly, I know this is the New Jersey coming out of me, right? The best way to say it is that most fundraisers wing it. Okay, salespeople too. I'm guilty of it. Is that if you don't have a plan and you're not well practiced, then you're just picking up the phone and you're kind of winging it rather than really, really, really being ready for that kind of making that kind of outreach. But the worst offense, the worst problem is that the organization doesn't support you all the way that you should be supported. They don't support you in enough training. And unfortunately, a lot of times the leadership, gosh, I'm going to get myself in trouble if there's all these leaders on the call, but I think it's mostly fundraisers. But it's that too often I've run into organizations where the leaders are never really involved in picking up the phone and making these kinds of calls, or they haven't done it in the past. So they have trouble gaining empathy and understanding what your job is really all about. So in addition to that, sadly, then because they don't understand what it's all about, they'll pressure you to get results. And this all falls back on the fact that nobody's really looking at where is the donor in the consideration process. The fact that a donor loves your mission doesn't mean that they're going to be welcoming or accepting of your outreach. So we're going to talk about this, about how do we get over that? How do we ensure that they are open to your outreach so that you land more meetings? So the first big point, and I'm laying down some groundwork, and then I'm going to get into a bunch of tips, all right? So the groundwork is that the focus has generally been on the fundraising process. It's been on the organization's process. It's on what are you going to do as a fundraiser and what are you going to do as an organization. And there's not enough focus. It should be at least half and half focused on where the donor is in the consideration process, okay? So here's what it looks like is that you'll get assigned a donor or a caseload. You'll be expected to call them, meet them, ask them for a gift, and close it, right? It sounds great. I mean, great process. And there's lots of these kinds of charts out there on the internet that try to display what the process should look like. But the problem is all of these, and I've really never seen any except, I guess, being very patting myself on the back, but I feel like I'm the only one talking about, like, where is the donor in this? Maybe that's because I am a donor. So I think first and foremost, like a donor, like where am I in this process? You need to know where the donor is. Do they want to be in cultivation? Are they ready for a solicitation? How do they feel about how the process went? Are they ready for even stewardship, or are they angry about the way that the gift was closed already? I mean, you got to know where the donor is in the relationship continuum. I don't like hearing phrases like, we need to pull folks through the pipeline. Like, can you imagine if you needed to buy a house or a car? You're making a highly considered decision, and the real estate agent or the car salesperson is just thinking about how they're going to pull you through. Nobody wants to be pulled through. People want to be supported in their decision-making process. So that's your job. You're not actually a fundraiser, you're a facilitator. So if you're a fundraiser, sure, you're raising money for the cause, but if you're a facilitator, you're supporting the decision-making process of the donor. So I like to think of it at least 50-50. Give the donor some credit in this process and think about them. Okay, this is going to be an ongoing theme of this presentation, because if you don't have the donor first, and I mean real customer centricity, not lip service to it, but if you don't have them in the center of your heart and your mind, then you're not going to be able to get that appointment. It just can't happen. So think of this like you would the decision-making process that you go through when you buy a car, when you make a decision to buy stocks or bonds or something, or a big purchase like a house or a vacation, okay? Think of the consideration process that you go through, because that's the process that your donor, especially major donors, are going to go through. And remember, legacy giving is a major gift and a highly considered decision. So it's not transactional, okay? We're not talking about $100 here, $200, $500. Talking about thousands of dollars, tens of thousands or millions of dollars. This is a very important decision. It's very different from the transactional kind of giving, the coin operated, we send a letter, we get it back. We get money back. It's like an ATM. That's not what you're doing. You're doing the highly considered decision, or you're supporting that. And in order to understand that, we're gonna go through this little chart. Now, first, you have to recognize that supporters can go forward or backward in the consideration continuum at any time, okay? And if you're offending them, badgering them, shaming them, whatever, pressuring them, it's more likely that they'll go backwards or they'll leave the process entirely. Also, you need to recognize that most of the time in the process is spent thinking about why they should do something. Why should they answer the phone? Why should they accept your call? Why should they accept a meeting, right? Why, and after they give, why should they give again? You know, only a small, very small period of time is spent on the how. Yet it's interesting because when I first got into this and I saw all these like planned giving websites, it's all focused on how. It doesn't make any sense unless you don't want the donor to talk to you and you want it to be a self-serve process. But otherwise, if all you focus on online is how, then you're really doing yourself a disservice if you'd rather talk to those people, okay? So recognize that people are gonna spend most of their time in the why part of the consideration process. And that red line, of course, is the end of life, because when it comes to legacy giving, you're not gonna get that money in most cases until the end, well, until they're gone, sadly. Okay, so stewardship is a very important, that's why it's in red, is because after you get, for instance, a legacy commitment or disclosure, you've got to steward them very well. And according to some research, if you do that right, you'll get 4 times more or revenue than you would have if you had not stewarded them properly. So anyway, this is what the decision-making process looks like for the donor. So now with that in mind as a baseline, I'm going to jump into these 10 tactics, and there's kind of some sub-tactics in this too. Number 1, first and foremost, you have to have the right mindset. Many fundraisers have this mindset correct just naturally. They're optimistic and they're not afraid to get hung up on or something. But unfortunately, there are too many that think that, by calling people, you're putting yourself in a position to be a beggar, manipulator, or arm twister. And that is not your job. I teach this to my salespeople. I've taught it to salespeople, and sorry if you're offended by being called a salesperson, but that is essentially what your job is. My salespeople and anybody that has worked for me in the past that's a salesperson, if they aimed to behave like a manipulator or arm twister, then they were out. They were out. Their job is to be a facilitator, was to find people's needs and match them with value and help facilitate the decision-making process. So if you have this mindset of being a beggar, manipulator, or arm twister, you've got to get that out of your head, because what you really are is a loving, caring, helpful, generous, joyful value creator and facilitator. And you're going through life and you're helping people who desperately want to give away their money so they can realize something for themselves. And they'll cry tears of joy when you help them be successful at giving away their money. So adjust your mindset, recognize who you are, understand these people want to give. They're looking for someone to remove the friction from the process and make it joyful so that they, as donors, can realize the best versions of themselves and wake up every morning, look at themselves in the mirror and say to themselves, I'm a great person because I did this. I gave that money. I made that kind of impact, right? Your job is to help them. And in many cases, people will feel that they're gaining salvation through your facilitation. So it's an amazing job. It's an amazing role. I applaud you all. For those of you who feel like arm twisters, it means you're doing it wrong. You got to change your mindset, okay? So if you help support the decision-making process, you build trust, you provide value, uncover needs, match those needs of the donor with a program or an initiative, which is essentially developing a relationship, then you're going to land more appointments. You have to show them, and we'll get into this more in a minute, you have to show people what value they'll gain through meeting with you. So that takes us to number 2 in these tactics, these tips, is that too often when people make outreach, they don't look at it from the customer's or the donor's perspective, in that there is this valley of distrust that exists. It's not you, it's society. We're all taught when we're young, beware of strangers, you know, because of what's going on in the world and society and everything with election season and who knows what else has happened to your donors in their lives. They have been taught to distrust you and everybody else at first. So there's this chasm, there's this, what I call the valley of distrust. You have to get over it. That's your job. But you can't get over it unless you first recognize that it exists and gain empathy for your donor. You can't get over it by feeling that you're entitled to an appointment. That's not how it works. They're thinking to themselves, you don't really care about me. You just want my money. I don't need you. I'm too busy. I'm not interested. I don't understand what you can offer me. Or they'll just push it off and say, not now, but maybe later. Or if they're in business, or maybe they're a doctor or something, they're going to have a gatekeeper there to keep you out. Gatekeeper Stewie. So, and by the way, I should mention, because someone asked me before the webinar, everything I'm telling you applies to getting a face-to-face meeting in person or a Zoom meeting. You know, it really doesn't matter what kind of meeting you're looking for. You need to buy into what I call an engagement calling process. It's one that helps you build trust, and I'll explain it a little further. It's mandatory in this engagement calling process that you have at least 2 conversations before you ask for anything. And in those conversations, you have to provide value, or at least seek ways to provide value by asking questions. You have to find ways to give to your donors. It's a powerful concept. It's called the law of reciprocity. If you give to people, they will give to you, or acquiesce when you make a request of them. So you've really got to um, uh, build that trust before you're able to ask, and you build trust through the law of reciprocity, through giving, okay? Now, there's an asterisk on this, because I will tell you that and in my life, I've been very successful by just calling people and asking for appointment in the first call. I can tell you that you can land tons of meetings by just pounding away and asking for a meeting right away. You can. And I don't begrudge you if you do it that way. All I'm telling you is that all the data and the research that we've done here at MarketSmart for our own business has proven to us that the longer lasting, higher retaining, greater lifetime value customers come from building engagement, building trust before asking for anything. So oftentimes the way we'll do it at MarketSmart is we'll try to build that trust with providing you with content like free webinars or free widgets like our DAF widget or reports, our blog, things like that. We'll try to ingratiate ourselves to you by giving away all that content, and then we may ask you for an appointment when we believe and it seems clear that you're ready for our outreach. So I'm telling you to do it the same way, basically. So it's not about cold calling, it's about engagement calling. And what that means is that you've got to provide value, as I said. And the problem with this for you, and the challenge, but I'm going to help you out with this, is that to provide value, you really don't need prospect identification. You really need more qualification type of research. See, it won't help you as much to know that they've given such and such amount in the past, or that they are the CEO of some company. It's more going to help you to know why they care, what's in their life story that entwines with your mission that would cause them to care. Is it that a doctor saved their life at your hospital? Is it that they met their spouse at your college? You know, is it that their grandmother took them to your museum, right? This is qualification research that you've got to have in order to make outreach properly. Having that kind of qualification research handy helps you gain empathy for who they really are and what they think, not who they are from a prospect identification sort of one-dimensional, two-dimensional perspective. You need to know what's in their hearts, not what's in their bio on LinkedIn, okay? So when you gain this kind of empathy and you understand the details of who they are really from qualification research, then you can think about them in an individual way and try and align what you say in your outreach to who they are. Now, although I'll get into this later at the very end, we recommend that you look at essentially two components: is what they say, or what I call verbatims in my book, or monitor what they do online. We call that digital body language. It's like the tells in poker, right? Because you need to know what's really in their heart. So we get the verbatims usually through surveys, and we monitor digital body language, like where they're clicking online. Did they just watch the video about the scholarship and the opportunity that you can fund a scholarship? You know, do they care about tax benefits? Well, they might have said in their survey that they don't care about tax benefits of giving, but you might have seen online that that individual, all they care about is tax benefits. That's all they keep clicking on, right? So knowing this stuff helps you craft your outreach. So let's assume that you do this properly. Then you'll know that someone, for instance, is between 70 and 80 years old. They have no children because they told you they have no children. This is not data that you could probably buy age-related data in prospect research methodology, but no children, you can't buy that. You can only get that as a verbatim from the donor. You could get presence of children in the household, but who's 70 and 80 years old who has their child in that? It doesn't know. So you want to find out if they ever gave birth to children, did they ever raise children? Because if they don't have children, it's more likely that they'll give more, right? Because where else are they going to give it? To Uncle Sam? You can find out things, and you must really. Did she meet her husband thanks to your employer? Like at the school. Is this her top choice for giving? Is the mission of utmost importance? Is she likely to give assets and might consider a legacy gift? Interested in giving? These are the kinds of qualification data points that you need in order to make outreach successful. So in the end, there's one other bullet point, if you will, that makes it more likely that you'll land an appointment, which is the recency of an individual's engagement. So it could be that they attended an event recently, but right now that's probably not happening. More so, they're probably spending most of their time online, and the recency of which they've engaged is an indicator of their likelihood to meet with you. So this is just a blurred out name here, but this is that person I was just showing you, is that they might consider a legacy gift, and they're likely to consider funding a major gift, scholarship with a major gift. And they're hot, they took a survey maybe a month ago or a year ago, but then they engaged with an email about 6 ways that they could benefit from sponsoring a kid for a scholarship or funding an endowment or something like that. So recency is key. Research has shown that if you engage with people or make outreach recently after they've engaged in some way, leaned in, your chances of landing an appointment go up by 700%. So when you have the qualification information, then you can prioritize people for outreach, and you can offer them something that makes them feel good. But you have to sit down and think about it and be very individualistic. You can't spam them to get appointments. So you're probably wondering, okay, how do I offer value to get people to lean in and engage? Well, there's a lot of things that you can offer. There's 35 of them, in fact, on this little slide. And of course, all these slides are going to be available for you. I'll just highlight a few of them, like offering people your annual report. Or if you're at a college or university, why not offer them a digital version of their yearbook from when they graduated, right? What a great offer of value. That'll get someone to trust you and perk up rather than you asking for money from them right away. Give them a yearbook. They could share pictures of them and their friends on Facebook and whatnot, or a workbook to learn how to be a philanthropist, perhaps. Asking for advice is always a great way to provide value. Giving people tours, even if they're virtual tours of your university, your museum, your hospital, right? If you are at trying to solve a disease concern, research, getting a researcher to actually present findings, explaining what they're doing with their money to help forward the cause and find the cure. One-to-one interactions with the beneficiaries of the donations, interview the scholarship person in a webinar or a Zoom meeting. And providing volunteer opportunities is a good value to provide. But then, of course, there's surveys and webinars like one that we're on right now. All right, so another thing about value, and I created this donor value checklist, which I won't go through all these bullet points, but it's on this in case you want to look at it later. But you really should go through this checklist to help you determine if the value that you're trying to offer your donor is really going to be found to be worthwhile from their perspective. You really don't want to send people, like I just got a calendar from one of the charities that I support. I don't want a calendar. I don't need a calendar. I got a calendar on my phone. I don't need a printed calendar. They just wasted like $3 sending me a calendar. That's the wrong kind of value. It actually made me mad. Don't make people mad. It's kind of simple. Here's another idea of a value that's part of our system. I mean, a lot of this is, it's just that I don't know where anybody else does it like this. So I have to use my examples. But we help our customers give away a workbook that helps supporters think about their life and write down their memoirs for their loved ones. See, this is very important for several reasons. One is it uses the law of reciprocity and you're delivering value. But number two is that you're helping someone think about their life story. And if they're a supporter, it's very likely that then they're connecting the dots. They're like, yeah, that's the hospital that saved my mom's life. And not only did they save my mom's life, but they're helping me think about my memoirs. And part of that is the hospital saved my mom's life. That's going to make them thinking about that is going to make them more likely to want to accept your outreach so that you can be their facilitator for giving. So that's another idea. Okay, so number 4, and I got to speed it up because I want to save time for questions and stuff. But you want to practice your dialogue. There's an amazing invention. It's called a piece of paper. People need to sit down in a quiet room with a blank sheet of paper, turn everything off, and a pen. And just think about your donor, the one you're about to reach out to, and start writing what you might say, what she might say. Then go in another direction, what you might say, what she might say. And you need to practice it because you got to be good at it. If any of you have ever played golf or any kind of sport or musical instrument, you know that the first time you try to strum a certain chord, you're terrible at it. Or the first time you try and hit the ball, you're terrible at it. But the more you do it, the better you get at it. It's called muscle memory. You need to develop muscle memory for your dialogue with donors. And making outreach calls is not something that you're doing that often that you can be that well practiced. And plus, every donor is different. They have a different why if you've done your qualification research properly. So you've got to think about that individual donor, take a pause before you just pick up the phone and try and set that appointment. No, think about your dialogue. What points could you ask them about? Okay, so some things, by the way, this is interesting because there's this company called Gong.io that helps salespeople. And they looked at over 90,000 sales conversations to determine what opening lines were good or bad, right? And I think this is very interesting because saying something like, did I catch you at a bad time, makes customers, prospective customers, 40% less likely to book a meeting with that salesperson. Now, if you ask, how are you? It makes them 340% more likely to book an appointment. Or if you explain the reason for your call, I mean, that's providing value. Not as good as asking someone how they are, but it provides value, so it makes it more likely that you'll get an appointment. Now, interestingly, this last one, how have you been, makes them 660% more likely to land an appointment. But think about this. If you're asking, how have you been, that means that you've already had a conversation with the person. I have to believe that the salespeople that Gong.io studied who asked, how have you been, are the ones that had 1 or 2 conversations prior to booking the appointment. So this sounds eerily a lot like engagement calling, right? So it's clear from this data that engagement calling is a good way to go, because then on that 3rd call, you say, hey, how have you been? And that opening line leads to more appointments getting set. I hope this is making sense to everybody. If it isn't, I got to move on. Ask questions later. All right. So other tips for providing value is to flatter them. Everybody likes to be flattered. It's okay. You know, give them a compliment. It's free to you. Show them that you know them. Show them that you looked at their survey in the past, or that you know what fraternity they were in, or, you know, where they vacation. Ask them about their vacation, things like that. Be relevant, tap into their emotions. Like if they said, yeah, I met my husband on the campus, you know, tap into that, ask questions about that. And above all else, be enthusiastic. Nobody likes to talk to a wet napkin. Everybody likes to talk to somebody who's energized about what they're doing. And the fact, you know, the fact that you're on the other side of the fence, you're actually doing the work that they can't do. I mean, your organization is taking on the cause that they can't do. All they can do is give you money. Your organization is actually doing the hard work, right? So be enthusiastic about that. Now, listen, okay? Ask questions and listen. One of my staff put me to the test. There was a sales call that I was on. This is a couple of years ago, and it was recorded. So he took the recording because he was like, oh, I'm going to see if Greg really practices what he preaches. So he took it and he like created this blue and yellow kind of thing for every time that I was talking, it's blue. And every time that the customer was talking or donor, you know, it's like yellow. And it ends up that, thankfully I did it well, is that I was only speaking 25% of the time. That's what you want. That's what you want to do. You know, if you're talking the whole time, then you're telling. And what we used to say when I was a sales guy is telling is not selling. Okay. So, all right, we've gone through a lot of these tips. I've got a few more to go, but just a little reminder, you've adjusted your mindset, I hope, to be a facilitator and not a fundraiser or solicitor. You've recognized and become empathetic about the fact that the valley of distrust exists. You bought into this idea of providing value and being reciprocal, giving. That's the engagement calling process. You've thought about ways, sat there and really thought about ways to provide value so you can make them feel good and get what they want. You've practiced your dialogue, so you're ready. You're ready now to pick up the phone, okay? Now, when you're on the phone, without sounding like a wimp, you do want to be respectful, and that means you should give them the power. Let them be in control, okay? So often salespeople will rub people the wrong way. I think of this, you know, car salespeople often get a bad rap. They're actually a lot better these days. And I think it's a very worthy profession, frankly. But the bad way, I guess the characterization is the pushy salesperson. So if you're pushy, that's not giving someone power. That's trying to take power away from the consumer or the donor, and it makes them feel uncomfortable. So, whoops, I went the wrong way. Pushing it always backfires. So ways to soften the discussion so that you're not sounding pushy is to use softening statements that say, for instance, I'm not calling to ask for a donation. You know, you can end this call at any time. It's completely up to you. I really don't want you to feel pressured at any time. Or if you're asking for the appointment, you could also say, why don't we just pencil this into your calendar? You can always change the appointment. See, so this actually does the reverse of what you might think. You might think you're being a wimp, but you're not. You're actually just giving them power. You're not sounding like a wimp. You don't want to sound squishy and like a wimp. All right. So next is you're going to want to ask a lot of questions. That makes people feel empowered that they are being listened to and and that their opinions are worthwhile. Really listen to their answers, because you might find jewels in there that you can then dig up and talk more about and ask about. Show real, genuine concern and care. Okay. Now, when we get to the point where you're finally going to ask for the appointment, because that's what all this is really about, is you want to land the appointment. You've already made them feel good. You've already presented the value that they'll gain from meeting with you. When you ask for the appointment, you've got to say it with complete clarity. Don't mishmash about it. Don't be like I was when I first asked my wife on a date, you know, when she wasn't my wife. And honey, would you want to go somewhere, maybe something? No. Be clear, be straightforward. And then once you get it out, asking for that appointment, shut up. Count to 10, okay? Start counting in your head to 10, because they're usually, if they're quiet and there's an uncomfortable pause, it's because they're thinking. Let them think. Don't interrupt their thinking process, or they will just opt to not take the appointment, okay? So this is what I would call a warm ask. After your engagement calls, you're finally asking for an appointment. It's not a cold ask, which would happen if you do it on the first call. Again, you can ask for appointments on the first call. It's not bad. It may work for you. I would just track it, because we found that it ends up working better in the long run, better retention, better lifetime value and such, if you ask for an appointment after you've already warmed a relationship up. Okay, so I'm going to run through a bunch. I wrote these out and I was like, well, if I were in your position, what would I say? I think one of the most tried and true ways to get an appointment is to just say, is to first set up an anchor meeting in the area, and then call people and let them know, I'll be in your area visiting with another supporter. So I was hoping we could get together on Tuesday at 3 p.m. or would another time work better for you? Shut up. Wait. If you talk first, you lose, okay? Another one is, hey, could we get together on Tuesday at 3, or would another time work better for you? And another, could we pencil in a time to meet so I can learn how to best serve your needs? Notice, by the way, that the word you, or even we, is highlighted in these because it's much better to use the word you than the word I. If you're using the word I more than the word you, it's clear that to this donor that it's all about you, not them. So try to use the word you and practice your ask for the appointment with the word you. You'll find it's hard at first because you're used to saying I really want to meet you, right? It's not bad to say it, but I'm just saying, think about it that way. So I'll go through another one. Carrie, during our last conversation, you mentioned X, Y, and Z, and it would be great to learn more about your thoughts on that. How about we get together on Wednesday or Thursday, okay? Which one? Why don't we get together so you can learn more about this? What does your schedule look like next week? Carrie, your story is fascinating. It would be great to learn more about you and your interests so I can work on your behalf to help you get more out of your relationship with our shared mission. Why don't we get together next week, perhaps on Tuesday? What do you say? Carrie, your support has been so wonderful. It really means a lot. Not everyone gets it like you do. That's why I wonder if you would consider giving us some feedback and advice on X, Y, and Z. It would be invaluable. Can we get together either next Tuesday or Thursday? It'd be great to learn more about you. If we were to meet, I might be able to help you get even more joy out of your relationship with our cause. What would your thoughts be about getting together to have an initial meeting? Or if I could help you find more meaning in your life through your involvement with our shared cause, what are your thoughts on getting together in person? Carrie, did you know that I can help you learn more about that? But we need to set aside some time for a deeper dive into it. Is there any reason you wouldn't want to open up your calendar so we can set up a meeting? I mean, I could do this all day, all right? So once you've done these things, you ask for the meeting, you shut up. One thing I want to caution you, maybe I'm the only one, I don't think so. Don't say I want to update you on what we're doing, especially like if you're at a college, because I get that from my college. It seems like every time they call, I want to update you on what we're doing on campus. It's like, okay, I don't care. I really don't. I care about me. You know, show me what's in it for me. Now, if you gave me something very specific, like maybe it's about the journalism school, I was a journalism major, you know, or maybe it was about the spot where I met my wife, truly, you know, this is different. But just a vague update me, don't say it. It's just, it's not personal. Okay. And by the way, when you say that, people know that you just want to ask for money. So, all right. So also you might have noticed in what I was saying in these examples is the alternative close is what it's called in sales. That's where you give them two options. You say, are mornings better or do you prefer afternoons? Is Tuesday good or how about Thursday? It's 1 p.m. or 4 p.m. You know, people don't want to think. Just give them two options. And then if neither of them are good, they'll tell you and move on to the next one. Next option, I mean. All right, number 7, leave voicemail. It's not a bad thing to leave voicemail. However, I will tell you that we've tested calling people 2 or 3 times during the day. I'm talking about you all. We'll call like in the morning, you might not be available. In midday, maybe you're not available. But in the afternoon, you know, you're there. Or if by the afternoon you don't answer the phone still, then we'll leave a voicemail, or we should. So you should offer to provide value in that voicemail, okay? And when I say that we call 3 times in a day, it's not to be badgering. It's just recognizing that you're probably busy at other times of the day, right? So anyway, in your voicemail, think of it like a radio message. Radio messages, you have to hear them like 11, 20 times before they seep in. So leaving a message that provides value to the donor is something that you might have to do 3 or 4 times before they'll actually let it drop in and they'll call you back. But flatter them, you know, do all these things that I talked about before. All right, consider LinkedIn. If you are not on LinkedIn, you're crazy. Number 1. Number 2, you should get your profile nice and with a good picture. And hopefully your profile talks about how you provide value to donors. Otherwise, it looks like you're looking for a job. And the donor who checks you out on LinkedIn will wonder, why does your profile look like you're looking for a job? If you're looking for a job, that's a different story. Change your profile so that you're looking for a job. But if you have a job, your profile should be for your donors, I think. Argue with me if you want. Anyway, I've got some tips on this. I'm not going to go through them because it'll take too long, but it's in here and you can read them when you get the slides. 9, we're almost there. We're almost done. Count your failures as successes. Failures are negative, they're a real bummer. Try to look at them as positives. Count them, how many times you need to call someone until you get an appointment. Or how many people do you have to call before you get an appointment? How many months goes by before you get an appointment, right? And then when you know that metric, let's suppose that it's 22 times that you have to call somebody. I mean, that's a lot. Hopefully it's not that much. But if it's 22 times and you're at number 19, then you'll kind of know that all those 19 failures actually make you one step closer to your potential success. It'll keep you going. So think of your failures as successes. Also, don't be afraid to disqualify people. You know, we send at MarketSmart, we send a breakup email. Like if we've been asking people or trying to provide value and then we try to reach out to them and they're just not responsive, after a while, we actually send them an email that says, look, trying to get in touch with you. I want to give you X, Y, or Z. I want to do this for you. I want to provide value for you. in the way that is relatable to them. Of course, it's got to be personalized and relevant, but we haven't heard back. So we're going to take you off the list, and don't worry, we'll never bother you ever again. It's okay if they still don't respond, then disqualify them. It's clear. But it usually, by the way, means that they're just not ready now. It's not a hard no, but at least now you know not to waste your time anymore. I will tell you that our breakup emails are some of our most successful outreach efforts. When we send that breakup email, a lot of people reply and say, no, don't take me off your list. It's just, this is going on, this is going on. So sometimes you need to do a little shock there. Okay, it's okay. Last point, leverage referrals. So if you've got a major donor, ask them who else they know that cares about the cause. If you've got a board member, your board member should be providing you with leads. I'm assuming that they're well-to-do and they have capacity. If you have board members that are mostly not well-to-do and don't have capacity, then I wonder why they're board members, just saying. But anyway, leverage those referrals. Those are going to be the easiest ones. I probably should have made that the first recommendation. But, you know, and in many times they'll help arrange the meeting for you. They'll just loop you into an email or make the call and set up the appointment for you. So leverage those referrals. They're probably the easiest that appointments that you could set. All right, so that's pretty much the content of this webinar. I hope you got something out of it. I believe and I know that the most qualified appointments actually almost set themselves if you do this stuff, okay? So thank you very much for joining us. I'm gonna take questions, but I'm gonna do a 2-minute spiel on what MarketSmart does. And then I promise you I'm gonna answer questions and I'll stay on as long as people keep asking me questions. So let's talk about MarketSmart just for a minute. I'm gonna stop this share. I'm gonna go to another share. I hope you don't leave. Please don't leave this call because the questions are amazing. I'm trying to sell the questions. So this is what we do, all right? It's gonna be really quick. We collect qualification kind of data. We're a qualification and prioritization company. Again, it's all written, it's described in my book. But the short story is we use a survey that's part of our technology platform. It's not SurveyMonkey, it's much, much more sophisticated than that. And we perfected the art of collecting survey information. Now that we've done this for about 10 years, there are a lot of firms that are doing donor surveys. The problem is that they don't cultivate the donor after providing value after the survey. I don't know why they do it. They don't follow up with people, maybe just a few or maybe 100. But if you do a donor survey and you don't follow up with people, they're gonna get mad. They're gonna wonder, why did I give all that information to my favorite charity, and what did they do with it? It's just another way to piss people off. So I don't recommend ever doing surveys unless you're actually going to use the data and show people how you use the data. Otherwise, you're just kind of being mean. I'm sorry. So anyway, we use the survey to collect what I called verbatims, which is one of the qualification data points. And then our AI thinks about what they said in their survey, and it spawns, for lack of a better word, automated emails that have been somewhat perfected over all these years that we've been doing it, because we know what donors like, we know what subject lines they like, we know what words they like, we know what offers they like, and of course we mishmash into these emails automatically what the individual donor cares about, so these emails are highly relevant and personalized, okay? It's gotta also offer value to the donor to warm them up, law of reciprocity, so these emails created by the computer provide value in a way that aligns with how the donor wants value. This helps the donor move themselves through the consideration process until such time that they become outreach ready for you. So think about this. Think of it as if you, the fundraiser, could look through hundreds or thousands of surveys or tens of thousands of surveys, pick out the best ones, send out highly relevant, and type an awesome email and include a link to something that's valuable to the donor. If you could do that for 100 or 1,000 people in a click, that would be great, but you can't. And you also don't have all the research from hundreds of organizations that helps you understand what emails will work best. So that's what we do. We create these, we warm them up. Then, oh, and I forgot to mention that we put a cookie on each donor's browser so we can monitor where they're clicking online so that you can understand not only their verbatims, not only whether they're clicking on your emails, but where are they going on your website by individual. Again, this helps you see how recently they've engaged, and then you can reach out to them when they're hot. That leads to better meetings, all right? And it leads to the fact that you'll land more meetings. So that's essentially what we do. That's the super short story. Hope that was painless for you all. I'm going to take questions now. So let's take a look, see what's going on here. Whew, there's a lot of questions. Carrie, I don't know if you're still with us or if you fell asleep.
No, I'm still here. The open questions are the ones that I thought were really good for you to tackle. I don't know if we're going to have enough time. I tried to keep it to 10, but there were so many good questions. There may be about 16 there.
Okay, so do you want to ask them of me or I can look in here?
You know what, why don't I just ask, because I feel like it's going to be easier to do it, right? Okay. So one of them was a nice compliment that I wanted you to hear from Deborah Howitt. Fundraising amens right now. First time I've heard anyone truly break down the humanity of what we do and remembering the donor has a perspective that's critical to the relationship. You've humanized the donor engagement cycle. Thank you. I thought that was great. And
You're welcome. Hey, yeah. don't say last names though here.
Oh, no last names. Okay. Sorry. Okay. So, okay. So back to the data, the research that you did on opening lines, and you had how bad it was to say, is it a bad time for you? How about if Ruth asked? How about if you ask, is this a good time for you?
Oh, is this a good time versus is this a bad time?
Right. Like phrasing it from a positive.
Yeah, and that was gong.io that did that research. I have never felt that that's a great opener, frankly. It's very polite. You can try it. Look, I think one of the things that people don't do is they don't track what works and what doesn't. So, you know, I would test it. But I'm not a fan of asking that unless you like hear a baby crying in the background or a lot of noise or something. Then it's like, is this a good time? You know, but if there isn't, it just doesn't really make sense to me. Like, you just called them, you know you interrupted them, you know you got them out of their chair and they answered the phone. So now you ask them, is this a good time? I don't know. I don't get it. I don't really get it. I don't get it. So, but test it.
Okay, and Dennis wants to know if there's an ideal spacing between the calls that you place when you're placing your engagement calls.
Well, no, there isn't, because it depends. If they've recently engaged and you've got amazing value that you want to give to them, then you should be so excited about it and persistent about it. Like if you wanted to give your best friend a call on their birthday, and they didn't answer the phone, you'd probably try again, right? Because you want to do something for them. So I would say if they're highly engaged, recently engaged, and you've got something great of value, I wouldn't wait 3 months to call them again. How great can it be, the value that you're trying to supply them with, if you're waiting that long? I don't get that either. So I know it's like, well, I'll call them in 3 weeks. I don't know. Did they tell you to call them in 3 weeks? I don't know. If you've got good value and they've recently engaged and you think you can provide them with something that they'll appreciate, I would try again the next day.
Sounds good. Okay, so, and then Nilan John says, most of these suggestions seem to be oriented towards legacy giving. How can these be adapted to institutional donors who have very strong gatekeepers in place to keep outsiders away?
Yeah, okay, so this is a good question. However, at the first part, I don't understand why this is oriented towards legacy giving. I really don't get that at all. I don't understand that, but maybe this person will reach out to me and we could privately discuss it. It's the same. But anyway, with talking about like donors that are doctors or CEOs and they have gatekeepers, well, first of all, you can contact them directly through LinkedIn. If they're a CEO, contact me. I'll answer, you know, or on Twitter, or if you're connected with them on Facebook through message. But more so, talking about gatekeepers, there's a whole art and science that I didn't get into because it would have made this event much too long with regard to how you can build value for the gatekeeper so that he or she wants to get you in front of that donor, okay? So it makes it a two-step process, but how does that gatekeeper win? How do you build a relationship with the gatekeeper? How do you show empathy for the gatekeeper, that you understand their job and their role and you're empathetic to it? And you want to ask them, what should I do? You know, ask them for advice. So it's kind of the same stuff. It's just you have to do it for the gatekeeper first. Then you can get through. Don't ever try to trick the gatekeeper, by the way. That's a death sentence for you.
All right. So Mary would like to know about, because we're talking a lot about the in-person meetings, she was curious if you had some phrasing to ask for a virtual meeting.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, they're like the same as the ones that I did. It's just asking for a virtual meeting. It's really not any different. You're still asking for an appointment. In fact, what we do, if any of you have ever gotten an email from me, I leave it at the bottom of my email. There's a link so people can schedule themselves on my calendar. It's like, look, here's my calendar. Pick a time that's good for you, you know? So yeah, I hope that helps.
Yeah. Okay. And then Jennifer asked, so many of the suggested actions are email dependent. What if you don't have an email address and you can't get the donor on the phone?
Wow, well, then that's LinkedIn. I mean,
There you go.
go on LinkedIn. Yeah, I mean, otherwise you need to use like a megaphone. Um, you know, yeah, there's only so many communication channels. However, mail still works, like a heartfelt letter and giving them a link to your calendar. If you give them a letter and you provide clearly the type of value that you can offer them and that you'll give to them, and then type out the link to your calendar appointment setting tool, yeah, that'll work. There's probably other ways too. I'm thinking, I mean, if we could be in person right now, then it's like you can ask people face to face at an event or something, but it's kind of hard to do. But I think direct mail still works.
Okay. And then on LinkedIn, on the LinkedIn front, do you recommend putting our fundraising dollar range in our LinkedIn job description? That's from Julia.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. I think that helps people understand that you're the one that talks about those level of gifts. I think I would probably put something, let's be careful about this because you don't want to scare people away. Like if they want to give, maybe you want to put something in there that this is what I work on, but I can connect you with people who work on the other types of gifts. So something like that. Don't only say that this is all you do, because I think you can add value. You could probably say, I work on this, but can connect you with people for other kinds of gifts or volunteer opportunities and such.
Okay, and then we have one from Judy.
Hold on one more second. The reason why I say I think it's not a bad idea to put the dollar amount in there is because then it becomes a self-qualifier, if you will, is like, people will look at you and be like, okay, I get it. We humans, we're always categorizing. We're always trying to understand how the world works. You know, what show should we watch? Is this a funny show? Is this a sad show? Is this fundraiser for the big gifts or the little gifts? You know, things like that.
Right, right. How many more do you have time for, Greg?
I'm get rock. Let's do it. Keep them coming. I'm here.
Okay. Well, a lot of them are asking a similar question, and it seems like one of the biggest challenges of our audience is that opening line, and like they're putting them to specific scenarios, right? So Judy says, I work for a 2-year institution and most of our donors are not alumni. Our donors are mostly local and are individuals or companies who support our mission for workforce training. What is my opening line for wanting to meet with them?
Right. Well, so Judy, please don't take this the wrong way. It's not about what you want. It's about finding out what they want. So I would say that your opening line is probably to ask them about you'd like to ask them some questions to see if you might be able to provide value for them, you know, to learn what they might want to get out of the, I'm assuming it's a 2-year college. What would you like to get out of it? What have you gotten out of it? What's your experience been like for your workforce? You know, what was your volunteer experience like? You know, it's not about you wanting to meet with them. It's about trying to discover and uncover how you can provide value to them, or at least thinking about that beforehand. And then when you make that outreach call, you're sort of armed with the knowledge, the qualification knowledge I was talking about, so that you can talk to them intelligently and relevantly in a personalized, individualistic fashion. Should already have had an idea. If they were involved with the institution using the workforce training, then yeah, ask them how that went. What can be improved? You know, what do you think we could do better? How did you benefit? How did you not benefit? You know, this is, again, it's not about trying to get the meeting at first. It's about trying to provide value so they gain trust. As the trust grows, the meeting will almost set itself. Hope that makes sense.
Yeah, good answer. We have one more, and this one is from Gabby. For the breakup email specifically, do you send it only to people who do not respond to outreach? Or would you also send it to a member whom, after years of cultivation, still won't tell you about their estate plans? She has a donor who has been in her portfolio for a year and was in her predecessors for 3 to 4 years. After getting asked to complete our leadership gift challenge 5 times, she never replied to those emails or discussed it. She does, however, reply to outreach emails that are just about information.
Yeah, look, so this is an interesting question because leadership at organizations want to know what's in the will, right? So when my grandmother was sick and dying of cancer, and this is true, you know, at one point, I got to be honest, because I was young, I thought to myself, I wonder if I'm in her will, right? I felt a little guilty about thinking about it. It's kind of crude. But I never asked my grandmother if I was in her will, right? It's kind of rude.
Yeah.
So if this person, or I should even go further and say, now I ended up getting $500. Okay, this is great. And this is my grandmother who would like send me $5 for my birthday. You know, yeah. If I knew that I was in her will, I probably would never have asked her how much. It's a weird thing. You have to think about what is the value that you can provide to the donor so that they will disclose the amount or the fact that they're leaving your organization in their will. See, it's interesting. These questions are very much organization centric. It's not about what your leadership wants. I know they want to count the money before the person dies, But if you keep asking them how much money is in their will or to sign some statement, they're going to take you out of the will. And they're going to leave that money to the other organizations that are in their will. So I think what would be a better way to go is to learn more about that human being and ask them about them, not about how much money they're going to leave you or whether they're going to leave you any money.
Right.
And
So,
if your bosses pressure you to keep finding out the answers to those questions, you're kind of in the wrong, working for the wrong people, because they don't have any humanity and they can't put themselves in the donor's shoes. And I wonder if those leaders have left the organization in their will. And if they did, they shouldn't be offended that you asked them if the organization's in their will, and they should disclose exactly how much.
and Greg, she did have a quick clarification on that point.
Okay.
I just wanted to make sure you heard it. She's still a prospect and has never told us we are in her will. So she told us she's interested, quote unquote, in a gift about 8 years ago. So.
Okay, so she was interested. So the question is, again, what can you do to help her? You either need to find that out through qualification. I would send her a survey. Most people prefer to talk to surveys than they do to talk to humans. She might answer the survey, especially if it's not all about you and your organization, but it is all about her and how she can find meaning in her life through engaging with you. So make sure that it's value oriented for her. And if you figure out the value that she wants to gain, she'll start to, the reason she isn't answering the outreach is because she doesn't understand what's in it for her. And there isn't anything that's in it for her. She doesn't understand.
Okay, we have one from Susan. How do you connect with the widow or widower of a donor who died recently and whose estate plan includes a large legacy for your organization?
Wow. Well, this is a touchy one, right? So again, put on your cap and think about what would you want if your significant other died and you had left a charity in your will. What would you want from them, right? And then give that to them or offer to give that to them. So I would think one of the first things that a person in that position would want is to ensure that the money gets used the way that that donor wanted it to be used, or that that donor is remembered or kept anonymous, you know? So I would make outreach always thinking about what the donor, or asking what that donor might have wanted. So ask that significant other, say, look, I'm reaching out because I want to make sure that you get X, or that you get Y, or that you help so-and-so live on in the minds of others if you'd like. And, you know, things like this. It's all about what she or he gets. You've got to make your outreach in a way that provides value for them. Again, this is another one where the organization might want something, but you can't get anything until you give. It's the law of reciprocity. You can't. It's a law of the universe.
Great. Yeah, good answer.
I hope you people don't feel like I'm yelling at you. It's just I'm from New Jersey.
Yeah.
So I'm not trying to be mean.
No, we have some good comments here. We have Tina said, handwritten note. I've asked for phone numbers in a handwritten note or asked them to call or email me. It does work, as you are saying.
Yay.
Yeah. Yay. So let's see. I think that's pretty much about it. Some of these are a little bit repetitive, so hopefully everybody found their answers within.
Great. Well, this was fun. I thank everybody for joining us. The recording will be sent to you shortly, at the latest early next week, and you'll get the slides too. And I wish you all the best of luck in finding meaning in your lives through the facilitation